Hey guys, this is Al. Today you're looking at my 1984 Mercedes Benz 500 SL. As you can see, the car is covered in dust. I had to move it out of the way so that I can get to a rear axle that I was selling to a guy in California. And as you can see in the background, my shop is pretty large and it has only one door. So this car was about 6 cars in, and that means I have to move 6 cars to get this car out of the way, which basically means the car never leaves its spot. So it's been sitting where it's been sitting for the last, God knows how long, and that's why it's covered in dust. Underneath that dust is actually a pretty nice car. Um, I parked it maybe about 4 years ago. It needed a few things, and I wanted the space for my other cars at the home garage. It used to sit at my home garage, so I brought it to the shop. Um, but all in all, I mean, it's a pretty nice car. I found it as a project that was sitting in a field in 2009, and and I basically restored it, or I kind of freshened it up. I wouldn't call it a restoration, but in any case, I'll give it a wash, and then you guys can see it in with all the dirt washed off. All right. I bought this car back in 2009. Um, it was sitting in a field for about 10 years, and it had, the paint was completely shot on it. It didn't have a hard top, had only a soft top. I'm going to see if I can link some pictures of what it looked like when I found it. Um, it had a tarp over it, and a raccoon climbed inside the soft top and couldn't get back out. So that animal just shredded the interior, and it hadn't ran for about 10 years. But it was solid car and it was rust free. Um, the guy had bought it for his wife years and years ago, and then his wife wanted an SUV, so she ended up buying. He bought her an Escalade, and then it just sat, and eventually he lost his storage, so he moved it back to the farm and he just parked it in the field, and it was in a real bad way. Um, but it only had 69,000 miles on it, and I made him a pretty low offer, a lot lower than he was asking for, because it was in just a horrible state. And initially I upset him because it was a lot lower than he asked for, and he said to me, in his exact words, I'd rather sit on my porch and shoot at it from the porch than sell it for that kind of price. Um, so I kind of let it go. I didn't really want to argue with him or kind of negotiate with him if he felt that way. But I waited maybe about, I don't know, 5 or 6 months, and I emailed him again. I said, "Hey, do you still have this car?" And he said, "Yeah." So this time I took a different approach. I just basically said to him, "Look, I know about these cars. I've restored a couple of them. At the time, I'd been working on a couple of SLC 50 cars, and I kind of explained what it needed and how much it cost and why I came up with the price that I came up with because of what I needed to do to it. And this time, he responded and he said, "Just come and get it, and I don't want to ever hear from you again," which is fine by me. So I went over there and picked it up, got it back to my shop. Now I remember seeing it at the field. I opened the hood, and when I opened the hood, there was a hornet's nest right here, right by where that radar detector is, and they all came flying out at me. And I also tried to turn the key so I could move the steering wheel. And as I turned the key, I don't know, this rodent came flying out of there, and I mean, it was 2009, and if anybody heard a 6-year-old girl screaming from the top of her lungs around Sangre at someone, spring afternoon, it was me. It wasn't a 6-year-old girl, but I took it back to my shop, and I surrounded it with these smoke bombs and just basically set them off and shut the doors and kind of hoped that anything that was in here would die. The interior was completely shot. It was completely ripped to shreds. I found these seats off of 560 SL. They came out of Wisconsin, but luckily a friend of mine was coming into town, and I bought them on eBay and then had him basically throw them in the back of his wagon, and he had a 300 diesel TD wagon in '87, and drive it down here. So it didn't really cost me that much money to buy. The hardtop I bought used. Actually, I bought a 450 SL, and I got the hardtop with it. And I dismantled the car, but I kept the hardtop and just repainted it. So the hardtop it didn't come with the car, but it wasn't that hard to replace. I found the soft top at a junkyard. They were selling the entire soft top with the assembly for $150. So it was super easy to install because I didn't really have to install a soft top. I just installed the entire assembly, which is like four or five bolts, and that's all it needed to do to drop the soft top in. The dash does have some cracks in it, but I threw a dash cap over it and it's fine. Really odd thing about this car is that even though it sat for 10 years, AC worked. So I topped up the AC a little bit because it had been a little bit low, but I topped it up with R12 back in 2009. I haven't had to touch it since. It's always blown cold. You can see that the tags expired 4 years ago, and it still blows cold. So that's a real nice thing. What's going on with it right now? Well, the reason I parked it is because I needed to do a front end rebuild, and you know, that's overdue, and I ended up parking it. And if you don't know what my building looks like, you know, I have one door, and if this car is maybe about 4 or 5 cars back, so I need to move about 5 cars in order to get this car out. And because of that, it just never moved, right? So that's really the deal with it. The other thing that's going on with this car is it somehow developed a massive vacuum leak since it's been sitting. And I'm guessing it's because maybe the idle control valve is stuck, but it's got a massive vacuum leak, and the rear brakes are completely shot. I don't think I have any brake pads left. So the car is really tricky to drive now because the engine's overpowering the brakes, especially the back brakes. So it just kind of wants to snake its way everywhere it goes. But mechanically, it's a fine car. I mean, it's not really being a problem. I'm going to try to take it for a quick drive around the block, even though I really shouldn't because it's terrifying. The other thing is it's got a slight power steering leak at the gearbox. I had the gearbox rebuilt, but it didn't seem to fix the problem completely. It made it a lot better, but it didn't seem to fix it completely. So you can see the power steering is a little bit, and the brakes are very soft right now on it. And I'm idling at around, let's see if I can, I'm idling at around 1500 RPM, which is not good. Turn the AC on because it's no fun with that AC. So one thing that is a problem is that top seal that seals the soft top, the hard top to the windshield is missing, and therefore it's like the hard top isn't really it's leaking. But it drives really good. I mean, it's got these 17-inch AMG alloy wheels. They're made by a company called Oz. I got those wheels for a song, but they've turned out to be super expensive now. 10 years ago they weren't that expensive, but now people are wanting to buy, pay as much as I paid, probably for this whole car.
for these wheels nowadays. So I don't know, I may end up selling them because they're they don't ride great on this car. You know, I actually prefer the 15-inch wheels that came on the 107, the later 107 generation cars, the ones that are after 1986. You know, the 560 SLs. I think they're much better wheels for this car, and so I may swap those back in. I have a bunch of 560 SELs with those same wheels, and throw these up for sale because I know a couple of guys that have been asking me about them. They've been wanting them. But you know, apart from that, I mean, it's a genuine Euro car. It's got the Euro headlights and the Euro bumpers. It's a really straight car. I mean, it's very straight, and it's had a cheap paint job. I took everything off, and then I had a friend of mine who worked at who owned a Mako, actually, that painted it for me about 9-10 years ago, and didn't do a bad job. So I'm not going to do the job again. He did it in single stage urethane. It was around $600-700 to get the whole car painted. I took everything off, so I stripped the whole car, and then they just sanded it and painted it. I'll throw some pictures up if I can find them. But you know, all in all, you know, it's been a pretty nice car, and I kind of regret not driving it. I think I may start, you know, put it in the plan so that by September, when the weather cools down, I'll have it ready to be driving. You know, put the original wheels back on it, rebuild the front suspension, sort out the brakes, and figure out what's going on with that idle air control valve, and then put it back on the road, because it's a great car. I mean, it's a fun car to drive. It's very simple, and it's one of my more presentable cars. So that's it. That's my 500 SL. It's one of three 107 cars that I want to keep. I also have a 280 SL 5-speed that is a complete bucket. It's a project. It needs a lot of work. It's a complete restoration. It was probably in worse shape than this car when this car came along. And then I also have an infrared 450 SLC 50, which I bought from an estate sale. And it's been partially disassembled, but then the guy who owned it passed away. And so I need to put it back together again. I already have a Euro 350 SL that I'm going to use as a parts car template kind of thing to put it back together again, because you know, when somebody else takes a car apart and you have to put it back together again, sometimes you just don't know how things go together. So it's always good to have a parts car that you can take apart and kind of figure out how it comes back together. So that's it. That's really all I have. Let me know what you think about this car. I mean, I really love it. I think it's one of my favorite cars, and it's probably one of the cars that I'll never sell. I was so proud of myself when I bought this car. It was a dream of mine to own a Euro 500 SL, and when I got this one, you know, I was super excited. So it's something that I want to keep. All right, thanks very much.
So while editing this video, I remembered I had some pictures of the car when I first bought it, and you could see that it was sitting in a field and it was in a terrible state, pretty much torn apart inside and out. I'll show you some pictures of the interior, and you can get an idea of what the raccoon did when they got in through the soft top. It was a kind of a terrible state. Anyway, after I brought the car to the shop, I had to pretty much bomb the whole place and fumigate it because I was pretty sure that there were some critters living in there. And here are the seats that I bought of a junked 560 SL. They were in pretty good shape, but I needed to dye them, and I dyed them at home. They came out pretty well. And once I got it running, I had a friend of mine that owned a Mako paint it for me. He did it pretty inexpensively, and it came out pretty well, and it's held up. So that's my 84 Eurospec 500 SL. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's a new editing tool that I'm using, so let me know what you think.